I have been feeding my sourdough starter half einkorn flour and half all-purpose flour, and the all-purpose flour has the gluten in it that it needs. The einkorn flour has less gluten in it, but a lot more nutrition in it, and the bacteria are just really thriving in this mixture. This starter has doubled in a few hours just on my counter. I have been keeping my sourdough starter out on the counter and baking with it every day, or actually not even baking. I will take the sourdough starter and just make like a pancake or a gordita soft taco shell with it, just on a really good non-stick cast iron skillet, and those are delicious and a great way to use up your starter too. On this day, I am making some same day sourdough dinner rolls to go with some pulled pork for dinner. I love it when I can get dinner going early in the day and then just have it rising or cooking in a crock pot or a Dutch oven all day so that it's ready at the end of the day and I don't have to think about it at 4 o'clock and worry about what I'm going to make for dinner. That's one of the beauties of always having sourdough starter going on your counter, is you always have something going and ready to go. And then if you're always just making a batch of sourdough rolls or sourdough bread, you always have something that will be coming out of the oven fresh that day to fill your family's bellies. We still have a ton of blackberries coming off and some raspberries still coming off in the garden, but they are infested with flies and wasps. Luckily, the wasps don't bite you when you're picking blackberries because they don't live out there. But it does make you think like about all the germs that are on your berries. So I always wash them in cold water with vinegar and let them soak in there for a couple of minutes. Then give them a good rinse when I take them out to make sure that I'm killing all the germs that bugs would leave on your berries. And these I am going to use to make a blackberry pie with you today and blackberry jam. These are two recipes that we just love around our house, and I hope you enjoy them too. But first, I am going to get that pulled pork ready for dinner. So I just pulled a pork roast out of the freezer. The butcher just wrote on there pork roast, so I'm not sure exactly what kind of pork roast it is, but it has a lot of fat on it. So I am going to put this in my Dutch oven with a chopped up onion, and then I'm going to use salt, pepper, minced dry garlic, and dry hatch chili peppers. They're just like red pepper flakes, but not as spicy and super flavorful. It is my new favorite herb. If you are looking for a new spice to spice things up in your kitchen, the hatch chili peppers are great. They're not too spicy, but full of flavor. I would usually use a yellow or a white onion doing this, but all I had was a few red onions today, so I'm just using what I have. I'll get this in the bottom of the Dutch oven. It just helps add moisture to the roast and flavor, and then once you shred this pork, the sliced onion just mixes in with it and you really can't even tell it's there. It just adds a lot of flavor. So I'm just going to sprinkle about a teaspoon of each of these seasonings over the top of this roast. Super simple. Usually I would sear it. I'm just doing everything really easy this day and getting everything into the crock pot or the Dutch oven. And then I will add about a cup of broth to the bottom of the pan just for liquid, and then pop this in the oven and just let it cook all day at about 250 degrees. And then by dinner time it will be about 200 degrees internal temperature. I'll pull off all the fat and shred it. And then all these onions and broth and seasonings, I didn't tell you I did add rosemary, fresh rosemary. All of those seasonings and juices I will just stir the pulled pork into, and it'll just give it a lot of really good flavor. Our butcher is awesome, and you can just buy a whole pig from them. They have a pig farmer that they work with. So I did get a whole pig this last year, but next time I think I'll have them make a lot more sausage. I really enjoyed the sausage. Not the pork roasts as much. I do like a good butt roast. I love the hams, and I do like the pork chops, but the rest of it I will just put into sausage next time. Okay, moving on to these sourdough rolls. These are einkorn sourdough rolls. I do have some all-purpose flour in here too, just to help them rise a little bit. And then I did also Mix into them 1 cube of butter, which makes them a little bit more sticky, but honestly, they're so soft and delicious that it's worth it. So I do have this recipe on the blog at farmhouseharvest.net. I will link it in the description box below, but I'm really fast forwarding this today. I did maybe 1 or 2 sets of stretch and folds on this, and I am just going to shape these, get them into my baking dish and let them rise that way, and then get them into the oven. So I'm really pushing this with sourdough. Usually sourdough takes all day, at least 6 to 9 hours, and then you'll a lot of times have them overnight in the refrigerator or ferment overnight. But these ones we're going real fast, so they're not going to be a really sour flavor when you don't ferment them as fast. When you don't ferment things for as long, they are not as sour as they would be. But my family still loves them that way, and they will be great with a pulled pork and some barbecue sauce. And now on to this blackberry jam. So the one reason why I like this blackberry jam is because it requires very little to no sugar. And it's you use Pomona's pectin with it. And with Pomona's pectin, you can use honey. You can use 4 cups of fruit with only a half a cup of sugar or honey, or you can use water instead of the sugar or honey. And you don't have to use any sweetener at all, which is awesome. I am going to use allulose instead of sugar in this recipe. So this is a no sugar added recipe. So all you do is you add the pectin to your sugar or your sugar substitute or your honey or your water, whatever you're using, and then give that a good stir. And then that helps it to go into the berries without clumping up. So you blend up your berries, measure out, make sure you have the right amount of berries. Then your box of Pomona's pectin has a little packet of what they call calcium, and you mix it with water, and you just add some of that calcium water to your blended berries. Give that a really good stir, and then you whisk in the sugar and pectin mixture if you're using that. Or it would be a honey pectin mixture or a water pectin mixture if you're not adding any sweetener at all. And then just bring that to a simmer for a couple minutes until the pectin is dissolved into the berries. Ladle it into your clean jars and get it into the water bath canner. Super simple. I grew up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and food storage was always a really big subject. Everyone, self-sustainability and being able to provide for your family in hard times is always a really big subject. And so food storage has always been important to me. And I love the feeling of having shelves full of healthy preserved foods I can feed my family, a freezer full of good things to feed my family, and this year the root cellar full of healthy fresh beets so far is what I have in the root cellar. But really excited about the root cellar this year. We'll be putting potatoes and onions down there, and I will give you a tour of that later, so if you're interested, keep an eye out for that video. I was really planning on inviting friends and neighbors to come pick blackberries at our house this year, but because the flies and the wasps are so bad, I just have not done it. We've actually been treating the ground under and around our blackberry plants with a pesticide, trying to keep or get the flies under control a little bit. We do not want to spray the blackberry plants themselves, but it is just barely taking the edge off with the flies. They are just so bad this year. So it does make me feel a little bit better the way that I preserve blackberries. So I'm either canning them or freezing them with freezer jam, or just freezing them individually, but washing them in the vinegar and letting those soak in there for a couple minutes. And then either a really hard freeze in the freezer or canning them cooks them and makes me feel a little bit better about it. I do always add a couple tablespoons of vinegar to my water bath canner and try to help keep those jars nice and clean through the canning process. All right, now I am moving on to a blackberry pie, and I will be putting this on the blog at farmhouseharvest.net. But spoiler alert, this is one you're going to want to try. So I always use the, it's an egg and vinegar pie crust recipe passed down for generations in our family. I do mix these berries with some flour and some sugar. That just helps them to cook really well and not let all the juices just go all over the place inside your pie, but helps it to set up nicely. So I stirred in about a third a cup of sugar, a third a cup of flour into about 6 cups of fresh blackberries, trying not to break them as much as possible. And then I am making a butter pie crust here. Butter, egg, and vinegar pie crust here. I do love to grate my really cold butter into my flour. It just makes the process so much easier. And then one of the tricks is to make sure that your water that you add to the egg and vinegar mixture is ice cold. You do that because you don't want the butter in the pie crust to melt, and it just helps keep it cold. So I will get this into my flour and butter mixture, press it all into a dough ball, and then I'm going to split this into 2 discs and put it in the refrigerator and let it chill for a little bit. And then we will go ahead and start getting it ready to put into our pie pan. This is another recipe that's been passed down for generations in my house. This pie crust, it is so flaky and delicious. I love making it with butter. I never use Crisco. I have not tried it with lard or with tallow, but I love the flavor of butter. So this is a delicious pie crust. The oil or the egg and the vinegar just help to add structure to it and helps hold it together, and it just works. It's delicious. You don't really taste the vinegar in the pie crust, but it is a very flaky, delicious, and wonderful pie crust, especially the way that I'm going to finish it off today, and I'll show you that. But I brush it with butter and then sprinkle it with sugar, and it just helps it to brown on top and get nice and crusty and crispy and flaky and delicious. The reason I do voiceover on these is because my house is usually very loud. I've got kids running around, going in and out, talking to me, and you can't see that on video, but that's why I do voiceover most of the time. The one thing I love about baking is my kids love it when I bake. They know something really good is going to be ready for them, and they're happy and excited, and they go about doing their business and let me work in the kitchen. So I really enjoy baking for that reason. It's really therapeutic, I feel like. And this is just one of those, making a pie is just one of those things I grew up with my mother, my grandmother doing, and I enjoy doing it too. When your kids see that you're doing something for them, they are satisfied with you. And so my last 2 kids, I've got out of 6, the first 4 were really close together. The last 2 were spaced out a little bit further, so there's 4 years between my fourth and my 5th, and then like 8 years between my 5th and my 6th. So when you have kids that are spaced out that much, they're more like only children, kind of. They just don't play as well together as they do when they're really close together. So if you're planning your family, I highly recommend put your kids close together. They play really well together, and it is a much easier on you. But what takes some of the pressure off is when your kids see that you're busy cooking them something. They are satisfied, and they'll find something else to do and play on their own happily because they're looking forward to what you're making. And this is one of the funnest parts of canning, is when it has been processed for the amount of time it's supposed to process for, and it's coming out of the water bath canner. So fun to pull that out, let it sit on the counter, and then listen to the lids ping as they seal. You could do a top crust any way you want with this blackberry pie. You could also do a crumb topping instead of a pie crust on top. I really love pie crust, so I did it this way. This is going to be a lattice top, so I'm just cutting this top crust into about 1-inch sections with a pizza roller. You could also use a knife. Anything works that would cut it. And I am not perfect on my spacing on these at all, but it's homemade, it's delicious, and it doesn't really matter what it turns out looking like. It will be good. I also save all of my dough scraps, so the end pieces that are not really usable, I put those back into a bag with what I cut off of the bottom crust, and I've got that in the refrigerator. Those are just really fun to make pie crust cookies with. So I will take a cookie sheet, put those on a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. I will roll them nice and thin. Then I will slather them with a little bit of butter and sprinkle those with cinnamon sugar and bake them until they're nice and crispy. And man, that is delicious. It fills the house with such a good smell. The kids love it, and it is a great thing to do with your leftover pie dough. This is a very fun part of making a pie. You get creative with a lattice top and kind of braid these together. I don't know what else you would call it. And you can make it look beautiful. You can get really fancy and actually braid the strips that you use for the lattice top. That's really gorgeous. I am not very good at that, but despite my skills in making that look beautiful, it turns out delicious and your family will love it either way. These sourdough rolls were finished in about 4 hours, start to finish. So I cook them a lot faster. I really push them a lot faster. When I can rise dough on top of my oven or inside my oven, and it's heated in there, not too hot, but it's like 90 degrees inside my oven, maybe 85. Just really helps things rise a lot faster, and you can get it done a lot faster. So my mom taught me this. You take a 2-inch piece of aluminum foil and you wrap it around the edge of your pie. It's like a pie shield, homemade pie shield, and put that in the oven. It just protects the outside of the crust from burning because it's a lot thinner there and you don't want that to burn. So this aluminum foil, you just put that around the edges before you put it in the oven. I am using the leftover butter that I spread over the top of my pie crust on these rolls. I like to always butter the tops of my rolls when they come out of the oven. And the final pulled pork mixed in with the juices that are left. I did take a lot of fat off of this before I shredded the meat together, and then just mixed it in with the juices at the bottom of the pot. It was very flavorful and delicious with those rolls. The blackberry pie goes into a 375 degree preheated oven. I cooked it for 45 minutes with that pie shield on, and then I took that pie shield off and let it cook for another 15 to 20 minutes, and then pulled it out and let it cool. You've got to let it cool for about an hour to let the juices solidify inside the pie so that it doesn't just run all over your plate. Of course, you can eat it hot if you don't care what it looks like, but if you want the juices from the blackberries to be set up nicely, wait about an hour before you cut it and serve it with vanilla ice cream.